before we begin, I want to make sure that you guys are loading up the brushes that are included in the project. Now, if you're using just the default Photoshop brushes, you're not going to get very far. The brush collection that I included has a lot of really cool pressure sensitive elements about each one that really help you create a natural feel to your textures. Now let's just load them up. So if you go to your brush presets window, hit a little down arrow, hit load brushes, and then you're going to go to wherever you downloaded the texturing brushes, and then you should have all of them loaded here, and there's quite a few. I'll go over all of them really quick. So basic hard and soft round are your basic round brushes. They are all pressure sensitive for size and transparency. The hard has like a hard fall off. The soft has a soft fall off. These bits brushes are for really fine detail and noisiness painting. So like these are really cool if you're doing some edge work, or you're trying to wear the edges off some texture, or you're adding maybe some frozen stuff. These are great to use in layer masks. This Bits 5 has an interesting kind of wet edge to it. Some, like this Bits 7 has a very large brush size, but when you paint it's like super fine and dotted, and the harder you hit, the more noisy and splotchy it becomes. Bits 8 is a favorite of mine. It's just constantly hard, but the more you press, the more linear it becomes. So like, there's still a nice line that's kind of warm, but then it has a little bit of noise on the edge of it. Very cool brush. Spray brushes are great for just like spraying. All kinds of different interesting textural patterns here to work with. Some real subtle, some very stark wetness. Definitely experiment with these as you're making textures, because it's really difficult to tell how something could be used out of context. So like here, it's like, oh, these brushes look kind of crazy, whatever. It's kind of silly. But once you have a texture and everything's set up, their use becomes way more apparent to you. So that could be really interesting for like metal shavings, or a light dusting of something. Then here's a spray soft brush. This one's really interesting because it's got this like sharp end blurriness to it. And all these brushes were gleaned from online sources. I just took them and organized them. I culled the ones that I felt weren't all that useful, and I renamed the ones and combined them all together that I felt were useful. So this is like a scrape brush if you need to like create some harshness. Maybe that will be your like base pattern. Then you go in and start erasing, so it looks a little more natural. We got some spray wider brushes, which is kind of crazy. This is a subtle crack brush. Really subtle stuff. Might be easier if you saw it like this, maybe. A rip. That's interesting. Might be a little bit crazy if it was so large, but if we shrunk it down, it might make more sense. Got some symmetry there. Could be useful. Another rip. That's interesting. It got a line through the center. It's kind of cool. Busted. Just kind of like, almost like a punch or a bullet hole. Frost is interesting. I use this brush quite a bit for some like edge wear as well, because I like how frayed it looks. good for erasing. It's big cracks. Maybe you find a use for that. Small cracks, medium size, soft ones. These background brushes are interesting for just creating a wash. Just creating very subtlety, lots of subtlety on there. Fibrous, interesting fiber brush, very painterly. Bands, it's useful for creating lines. Could be cool for wires. And then I have a whole bunch of these like decal brushes. They increase in size as they go higher. These are not pressure sensitive, but they're really cool for just like little bits and textures and stuff. Like scuff marks on metal or what have you. They get pretty big too. Scrape decal. We got some worn decals. We got these splash brushes that could be interesting for, I don't know, oil stains maybe. And then of course we have some square brushes. So load these up, play with them. I'm going to be using these throughout some of the lessons. So load them up, give them a try.